Welcome back to the New Dawn. It's time for us to have a look at what is making headlines in our dailies, just to skim through the front pages of those dailies. And we begin with the People Daily. Remember, you can grab a soft copy of the People Daily on our website, that is pd.co.ke. And let's have a look at that. At the very top of the People Daily, boost for Raila as Mauritius PM backs him for the AU top job. This comes amid Raila Odinga traversing the African continent just to campaign for his AUC bid. There are 24 Kenyans seized over bank fraud. Sophisticated suspects siphoned billions through fraudulent scripts ran after altering system security protocols of financial institutions. That's a story on page 4 of the People Daily. We have new tough rules for surrogate parenting, as well as why it would cost Kenya 61.5 billion shillings to suck coach Firat. That's with regards to the sporting fraternity and the Harambee Stars national team. We also have Mountain Coats Kalonzo. This is with regards to the function that happened yesterday where the combination reintegrated into the Gema outfit. That's what you're having on the front page of the People Daily. Let's have a look at the Daily Nation. Senators unite to reject the bill seeking to bar MPs from Harambees. There's also the probe over former PSs with high power cost, and that is PSs, the former PSs, that is Patrick Nyoike as well as Joseph Njoroge. The probe is also looking into Mr. Mugo Kabati. This is with regards to some deals that were done within the energy docket. Ntutukin, counting legal bat over 4,720 acre land in the Masai Mara. Scrolling down on the Daily Nation, Adani deals, court demands proof of termination. A judge has directed the government to table evidence on the revocation of 2 multi-billion shilling deals involving controversial Indian conglomerate Adani Group. President William Ruto ordered the cancellation last week following a bribery indictment by the U.S. authorities. We'll be looking at that with lawyers led by Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka asking the government to provide proof that these deals have actually been cancelled. Drug trafficker Joyce Akinyi finally runs out of luck. After almost 5 years of trial, Joyce Akinyi Ochieng has been found guilty of drug trafficking. A story on page 3 of the Daily Nation. And the question right there, is it the end of Azimio coalition? With Azimio La Umoja One Kenya coalition 2022 presidential candidate, that is Martha Karua, the running mate rather, will today lead NARC Kenya Party's National Delegates Convention to formally withdraw from the opposition coalition, signaling the impending collapse of the outfit as more affiliate parties plot to exit. Will this be the beginning of the end of the Azimio coalition outfit? Let's have a look at the Standard, see what is making headlines right there. Basically the same story. Adani deals, show proof of cancelled contract, state told. We also have the story on the Kambari joining the Gema outfit, as well as the war in Israel, Hezbollah strike truce. Moving down and scrolling down, we have a fresh split hitting the review of varsity funding model. Remember, there was a 129-member committee formed to see to it that there's a review of that funding model. Some are for the idea that the funding model and the bands should be reduced, with university officials and other stakeholders stating that it should actually be looked into so that those very same bands can be increased. Medics call work boycott after intern doctor's death. KMPDU saying they're going on strike as of the 1st or the 30th of November, rather, following the death and the suicide of one of the intern doctors, basically pegged on those frustrations of their pay, not having received their pay even after that return to work formula was signed about 4 months ago. No learning in Moi Varsity as Dons press on with this very same strike. That is what we have on the Standard. ODM embraces consensus to avert poll fallout. ODM currently carrying out those grassroots elections. They've been marred with certain irregularities and sort of skirmishes in certain areas, but they're looking at how they're going to avert that moving forward. There's also the cries of ex-Lands boss with a record over 200 cases. Those are the stories making headlines on the Standard. We have Taifa Leo right there. Kioja cha Mabunge Mawili Nyamira. We also have Arsenal, that is with regards to the Sporting Desk Nyumba za Machozi. Mpango wa ujenzi wa nyumba za bei nafuu ambao ulianzishwa na serikali ya Kenya Kwanza umebadilika kuwa machozi, sio tu kwa wanaobebeshwa mzigo wa ushuru, wanaobomolewa makazi yao, bali pia kwa wanakandarusi. This is basically saying that it's a frustration for all stakeholders, from the developers to those who are supposed to be getting these very same affordable housing schemes. Ashtaki pastor kumchafulia jina kanisani, pigo kwa Kenya Power mahakamani, as well as vita kati ya Hezbollah na Israel vyaisha, mentioning that earlier on a truce has been struck between the two warring factions. Well, let's now get on with the newspaper review discussion for this morning. I'm joined by Kipruto Arap Kirwa, who's a former minister, agriculture minister in the previous government, as well as nominated Senator Tabitha Mutinda, who serves as the vice chair of the Finance and Budget Committee in the Senate, as well as Kimani Mwangi, a governance and political expert. Just maybe to begin with the topic on their done deal, let me begin with you, Kipruto. When you're looking at this, those who were against this deal from the initial start have come out and stated very clearly that they need evidence to see to it that what was pronounced by President Ruto during his State of the Nation address was actually true. But the government on their end are saying there wasn't a deal, so there's really nothing for us to provide. What are you reading in between these two?
Yes, Alan, thank you so much for the opportunity to discuss this particular issue, especially the Adani. Be it Ketrako or the international airport, Jomo Kenyatta. And of course, we suspect even in the health sector, there is a hand of Adani in that particular issue. It is a product of a government that is not believable. There are many things that we told them for almost 2 months or so, that this Adani made problems in Australia, especially Sydney. They made problems in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and even in India itself. And there is also a case somewhere in Europe where they're claiming $500 million out of a bankruptcy deal. So I think it is in keeping with that kind of lack of transparency in this regime, because up to now, we do not have the original documents. Having in mind the fact that there was a bit feasibility study that had been done internally by KAA. And later on, Adani came in, and of course they said they offered information on how they would be able to revamp or upgrade the international airport that we have. And they were using the same information, because within a month or so, because feasibility study, if it is done scientifically, you cannot just take 1 month or 2 days. It has to take slightly longer period than that, given the fact that the information they got perhaps came from internal kind of feasibility study that had been done. So it is because of that. We are not just suspicious of government. They are not as transparent as they ought to be. Because even for the president to say that he had gotten information from partner states, to say the least, was almost too little too late. Because he had been told about these things. And when you do due diligence, even those of us who are not in government, there is information in the internet, there is information all over that you can access and get information about me or about any of the panelists around us.
All right, Tabitha, I mean, Kipruto has raised concerns there on the level of transparency for the current government of the day. And just looking at what one of the petitioners in this case, that is Tony Gashoka, raised was that 2.6 billion shillings had been paid to different government officials, and now we're looking at a deal that has been cancelled. The government arguing there wasn't a deal, the deal was actually in negotiation phases. Do you buy this cancellation by the head of state during his pronouncement?
Thank you, Alan, for having us this particular morning. And after last week's presidential address, one of the things that we really appreciated through the presidency is the cancellation of this Adani process agreement deal that was underway. And I say underway, Alan, because it was in the process. It was in its stages. What this brought out that we need to appreciate as a country is that the president is a listening president. When these concerns were raised, when stakeholders came out, when our brothers and sisters from KA highlighted and voiced out on these particular issues, the results are out there. The president has cancelled this particular process of this deal. I call it process because it was still underway. An indication that then he's listening. When the stakeholders have come out and said, you know, we need to see how far this process had gone. We need to see the cost implication. How much, was there any cost that had been incurred? It is rightful because public documents within public documents are supposed to be shared, but to the public, it is their right. It is rightful for them to be able to ask, and there is no problem. What is needed is time, and this document should just be submitted for that for it to bring to light the position as far as the cost issue is concerned, because I think what is important is to bring to light to Kenyans that there were no costs that have been or expenditures that had already been incurred. When you are having a deal, be it government to government, be it a private to another private entity, there is a process before the conclusion. What the president highlighted, and if you're keen on that particular presidential address, he said, I have directed the relevant ministries, the Ministry of Energy, the Ministry of Transport, to cancel the ongoing, you know, agreement, the ongoing. Because it was not, if it was concluded, then there would be letters forth and back. We'll be seeing the legal teams, you know, both sides, forth and back. But that is not taking place. What has just been decided that this process is not ongoing. What do you need to do? We need to appreciate that. This is what, this is a request that had been done by Kenyans. Has it been granted? It's the same way, Alan. We had the issue of finance bill a few months ago. Demonstrations, right, left, and center. What was the end result? The president, you know, listened and said, I'm not assenting to this. And that came to a full stop. That's where we are.
Okay, let's look at it from this perspective. Of course, we have to give the president and those involved the benefit of a doubt that there's also time taken to make certain submissions. But ideally, when you're supposed to respond to something that hadn't necessarily got into a level where deals were signed, it should be as quick as a snap of a finger in terms of if you're requested for documentation, this should be submitted. But when you listen to these petitioners and those who oppose this deal, they lead to the fact that there's some sort of reservation from the people who are handling these agreements. Why do you think there could be some sort of reservations in submitting the necessary documentation?
It is the perception that you're trying to give Kenyans. That's the perception. And as you're bringing it out, you've talked about the issue of the time. Alan, the end goal, the result, what Kenyans needed was this agreement to be cancelled. Has that been achieved? That has been achieved. And that should be the end of this conversation. When it comes to the concern of that documents are not really being issued, when these issues were highlighted, in the Senate Committee, the Transport Committee, and also in the National Assembly, through the Transport Committee and the Energy Committees, when these matters were being addressed through these committees, those documents were submitted. That information or that feedback was given. The CS Transport was summoned, the CS Energy was summoned through the committees to be able to shed light on the issues of Adani, because the concerns had already been raised, even on the floor of the houses, both houses. And this information was resubmitted. Yes, there could be, it could be taking a bit of time, but the government has not denied to be able to give this particular document to the relevant stakeholders who have queried on these concerns. That denial has not been granted. So with time, it shall be granted. But what is important? What was the end goal? What was needed? What was needed was for the president to be able to hear the cry of Kenyans and be able to agree to put this particular agreement, this proposal deal aside, and we look forward for other partners who we can be able to have a PPP so that we can be able to expand our infrastructures, because as we speak, our revenue is not enough to be able to take care of the development projects. Okay,
Kimani, let me bring you on this. I mean, this halt of this process just came, and I believe it came the very same day we are having this discussion last week, and it came after Adani was inducted in the United States on bribery claims. Let's look at these figures that the prosecutors claim the Indian billionaire and his associates were offered. They were offered bribes in the tune of 34 billion Kenyan shillings. This is the same as in the United States, where they were indicted based on bribery claims. Looking at these figures that could be potentially bribes of 34 billion shillings in terms of bribes to see to it that this come to fruition, do you buy that this is just a natural process that is taking its face day by day?
Firstly, allegations will always be made, but then it is incumbent of those who make allegations to give evidence as to their existence. And when somebody alleges that there was 24 billion or 34 billion that was given in terms of bribes, then the question is, what evidence do they have to provide for their allegations to hold any water? But then it is good to state that Article 114 of Public Procurement and the Disposal Act allows the government, through what is called specially permitted procurement procedure, to do single sourcing on these PPP projects. But then the bad thing about this deal has been the mystery in which it has been shrouded. Because Article 10 of the Constitution is clear that every government undertaking must be subjected to public participation. And the Parliament is also tasked by the Constitution in Article 118 also to hold public participation on all its businesses. Now, I do not know why the government, while permitted by law to undertake this PPP without necessarily subjecting it through the procurement procedures, they chose not to involve the people to build trust and confidence into these deals. Because on paper, and if this was well managed, Adani deals were a blessing to a country like Kenya, which is struggling to raise funds, as the Senator has put it, because every 6 shillings out of every 10 shillings we collect is going to pay our debts. Now, getting an investor who would come and pump in money into the economy, allow for circulation of money as well as development in our economy is a good thing. But how do we manage it is the question. Again, when the president says he has cancelled it, and there are people who want him to prove that it has been cancelled, is in itself an indictment on the president that he suffers deficit of trust. That even after he has pronounced himself publicly, there are people who can believe it. But again, look at how he managed the withdrawn the finance bill of 2024. He has brought it back through the Ministry of Treasury. He has brought it back in piecemeal, right? So the president, in my opinion, needs to manage his political communication very well. It must inspire confidence, and it must be seen to be genuine, so that when he makes pronouncements, we can take him for his word, that I've instructed the relevant ministries to cancel. That should be what people should know will happen. Where it doesn't, then it can only speak into his flawed political communication that fails to inspire confidence among Kenyans.
Well, Kiro, just before we take this short break, Tabitha raised an important issue that we don't necessarily have enough revenue to allocate to certain development projects, big ones, so to say. Now, when you're looking at what Raila Odinga came out to say about Adani, just in the initial stages of this whole conversation, basically backing Adani, he spoke on something alluding to investor confidence. When we are constantly as a country defying and sort of meddling into these conversations, it sort of erodes that investor confidence in a country. Looking at what has happened to Adani in the cancellation of these 2 major deals, are we looking at a potential crisis where that investor confidence in our country is eroding by the day, or we are actually headed towards the right trajectory in keeping the government in check?
Well, Senator Mutinda is right in the sense that we do not have adequate revenue. And there's no country in the world that has enough revenue. Even those who say they have surpluses at some stage, they run into moments of depression. And therefore, no country can boast of enough resources. But it's also important and very instructive to note the following, that Adani in itself was not going to bring a lot of money to Kenya, be it Ketraco, be it airport. He was going to use the facilities of the airport, including the title deeds, to mobilize resources, and those resources now would be used to finance a project. And upon financing, we would be benefiting from us for the next 30 years. And if it had been done transparently, allowing other competitors, because Adani is not the only person on the globe that can do the kind of job they claim they were going to do at the airport, we would have seen some kind of level of transparency. And that transparency would have allowed us to say the best person won the tender. But the fact that they used information that had already been done internally by Kenya Airports Authority, an institution that is making profit, and he was going to use that information to mobilize resources and you get a lot of benefits out of it, creates a lot of suspicion among those of us who are not necessarily in government. The second issue that we really need to understand, and listening to the president, there were two projects. There is the Ketraco and there is the airport. As for the airport, the process was not yet complete. But for Ketraco, they had already signed. And therefore, they were cancelling something they have already signed. And any cancellation of signed document, you must have an exit clause that will obviate the need for you to pay certain expenses. But those are the issues now we are saying, tell us the truth. And as has been said by Mr. Kimani, it is also important, knowing that the Finance Bill 2024 has been sneaked back in piecemeal. We do not know whether there will be another phase of Adani coming back to do the same thing. That's why we need, beyond reasonable doubt, that that cancellation has been done, and there is evidence of cancellation, and therefore, if there is anything to be initiated about Ketrago, about the airport, that must be initiated according to normal rules of procurement.
All right. Okay. Well, we want to take a short break right here on New Dawn. When you get back, we continue with the conversation. Stick around.
We interrupt this program to bring you some breaking news.
Meet the team of undercover teenage spies working for a fictional version of the secret intelligence agency known as the